Good morning, LPES. Happy Friday. Happy last Friday feels for the month of October already. Unbelievable how quickly this month went by. This month we had a lot of different celebrations here, a lot of different things that were going on and are still going on in the next day or two. So we kind of start off the month with Week of Respect, where we talked about ways to be respectful to each other and ways to make sure that we aren't being a bully. Then we moved on to Mindfulness at LPES Week, where we talked about ways that we can practice mindfulness and keep ourselves calm even when we're feeling those big uncomfortable emotions. And we're going to talk more about those skills in a few minutes. And then this week is Red Ribbon Week, and so we've been learning about and talking about things that we can do instead of turning to drugs and alcohol and other things that are unhealthy for our bodies, those unhealthy choices. Because sometimes when we have those uncomfortable emotions, our instinct is to go to unhealthy choices. And this happens for all of us. When we're feeling really bad, sometimes we want to eat a little bit more junk food, or sometimes when we're feeling really upset, maybe we would just want to sit and watch a bunch of TV or play too many video games. So it's a great week for us to talk about those healthy choices we can make instead and what we can be doing for ourselves when we're feeling those uncomfortable emotions to help ourselves feel better versus then just keeping ourselves feeling worse and worse and worse. Next week, of course, we also have Halloween on Monday, and so we'll get to all be dressing up if you want to dress up, and we'll get to have our Halloween parade, which is really exciting. That day doesn't have anything to do with our emotions per se, but it's still a fun thing that we have to look forward to next week. So, that all being said, I thought we would start off our day with another one of our mindful morning cards that I have here. So last week's was... I thought I had it right at the front, but yes. Last week we pulled one and it was decide on a positive mantra for the day. So remember, when we were talking about positive mantras, those are things that we can repeat to ourselves over and over again that can help us to feel better, that can help us to fight against those negative thoughts or negative thinking that we might be having in our brain. I actually want to share a positive mantra with all of you that a friend of mine made for me. So this is a positive mantra. It is an old quote, but then I also think it was used on a Netflix show. And it goes, we can, we will, we must. And it's really great. Miss V actually made this. So you can see the panther paw at the top. I almost said Panther Paw Pride, but that's our Panther Pride meetings, combining things here. And so it just says, we can, we will, we must. And this is one that I've been liking to repeat to myself when I'm feeling like things are a little stressful or when I'm feeling like I don't know what to do. I keep telling myself we can, we will, we must. We must keep going. We can do it and we will do it. We will get through it. So I thought I'd share that one with all of you because this is kind of my new favorite one to repeat to myself when I need it. So hopefully you could use it too if you need to. We can, we will, we must. In fact, why don't you repeat that after me? I'll say it first, you say it second. We can, we will, we must. Awesome. So hopefully you can remember this one when you need it. All right. So, forgot what I was doing for a moment. So we're going to pull a new Mindful Morning card right now. So this one is, I love this. Leave a positive message for someone else to find. Ooh, what a great fun one to do. So this doesn't have to be something big, and it's just kind of a challenge for you for the rest of today or even over the weekend. It doesn't have to be at school, but you could leave a positive message for someone else in your family, for someone in our community, outside of school, maybe in Lincoln Park. If you go to the supermarket or you go to the post office, leaving a positive message for someone. It could be something that you write. It could be something that you draw. It could be something as simple as cutting out a heart and leaving it somewhere for someone to find to help cheer them up. But what a fun one for us to try and do together. And I just randomly pulled this one. I love that. So leaving a positive message for someone. It could also be things you do at home. So leaving a little note or a drawing for mom or dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever you live with, your brother or sister. But what a nice idea, because when we spread kindness, it makes our world a slightly better place. So why not try to spread some of that kindness around? Cool. Next week we will pick another one and I'll try to leave this one on top so we can review it together also. All right, my friends. So last week and this week, we're talking a lot about things we can fill our lives with instead of those unhealthy choices. And one of the ideas that I've talked to you about before, but I've never actually shown you a physical one before, is the idea of making a coping skills toolbox or toolkit. So I hope it's okay, I went to my friend Miss Prinzo's class earlier today, and I borrowed this from one of her students. And you can see on the outside, I put a little piece of paper that says coping skills, and there are all different things on there that we can do to calm ourselves down. So coping skills are things that we can use when life gets stressful, things that we can use when we feel angry or frustrated or uncomfortable, those uncomfortable emotions. Coping skills are ways that we can help ourselves to take a breath, to calm down, to refocus or recenter ourselves. And even if we can't make that emotion go away, even if we can't stop the sadness from happening, it's a way for us to cope. It's a way for us to get through those moments in a healthier way than just kind of being angry and doing something we regret, or being really sad and not being able to do anything else for our day. So I stuck this on here. This toolkit won't be our permanent one because I just borrowed this from a student who needs it back today, but I thought I'd put this in here and we can start going through those coping skills ideas. And as the school year goes on, and as we have more and more of these Friday feelings, as I come into your class for lessons, as you're talking just with your teachers and your friends in homeroom, your coping skills toolkit or toolbox is going to get more and more full of things that you can use to help yourselves feel better. So I put a few things in here to kind of start us off. The first thing that I have in here is pretty simple. So I have one of these squish balls here. Now, this isn't the only thing that we can use for a coping skill, especially for fidgets. You can see over here, I have lots of baskets and boxes full of different fidgets in there. Let me grab some other ones. Let's see. We have these, which were really popular last year. They're still pretty popular. Our Poppets, which are another thing that we can use. We have stretchy bands like this. We have some spiky kind of balls that are textured, and sometimes that feels nice when we're feeling a little stressed to kind of give that a squeeze or to be playing with it in our hands. But I just put this one in to kind of represent, to kind of show all of those different fidgets that we use. We have one more popular one is, of course, having those slow rise squishies that come in all different kinds of shapes and colors and sizes and things. All of those are coping skills. Using things like this, not to play with or to goof around with, but when we actually need to feel a little bit better, sometimes playing with this, and not just playing with it, but actually focusing on it, can help us to calm our brain down, to calm our heart down a little bit. So if we're playing with something like this, noticing what it feels like, what it sounds like, what colors it is, what the texture of it is, how it makes us feel when we're using something like this, how we feel inside. All of those are great ways for us to use as a coping skill, use fidgets as a coping skill. Now, sometimes fidgets can be fun, and they can be things that we also play with. But like I said, this is not the same thing as when we're just kind of sitting around with a friend, throwing a ball back and forth, or playing with something because it's really fun and entertaining. Using a fidget to cope is very different because we are using it to calm our body down. We're using it to give ourselves what we call a sensory break, or giving our senses something to kind of fixate on or focus on, and that can help us to practice coping skills. Let me grab some other things I have in here. I also printed out a pair of lungs. Weird, right? But if you think about it, I was trying to think of the best way to represent or to show a picture of deep breathing. So taking those deep breaths, pausing and doing square breathing, pausing and doing five-finger breathing, pausing for a minute and just counting your breaths. Whatever breathing technique works for you, that is represented by our lungs being in our coping skills toolkit here. So we have a picture of our lungs to remind us that taking some deep breaths is another great way for us to feel better. Or for us to, even if we don't feel better, to get through those moments of uncomfortable emotions. And then another one I have in here is a flower. Now, it's a fake flower, I'll admit, because a real flower wouldn't live terribly long in this toolkit. But I put a fake flower in here to represent, what do you think? I bet some of you might be thinking it could be for a breathing exercise, which it could. Sometimes we pretend to smell a flower and blow on the petals. But the reason I actually put a flower in here is because of nature, because of being outside, because of spending time in the sunlight, or even if it's a cloudy day, still getting ourselves outside, breathing fresh air, being outside of a building like our school or our home or our apartment, wherever you might be. When we spend time in nature, that is another great way for us to practice coping. Now, this might not be a way that we can practice it in that moment. If you're in class and you're feeling really upset or frustrated, you might not just be able to go outside. You would get in a lot of trouble if we left without asking anyone or going with an adult. But it can be something that we use over time to help ourselves feel a little bit less stressed in general. I'll give you an example. Sometimes if I go home from work and I'm still feeling really upset about something, or I'm feeling really nervous about something, I try to make sure I go outside for at least a few minutes, even if it's cold out, bundle up and try and walk outside for a bit, because I know in the long run it's going to help me to feel a bit better, to feel a little bit less stressed. And one of the things we do when we go outside is we can kind of combine this with those senses that we were talking about a little bit earlier and we've talked about in the past. Going outside and checking in with our senses is such a great way to calm our body and mind, focusing on the things that we can see, on the things that we can smell, on the things that we can touch or feel, on what the air feels like outside, on what it smells like outside, especially this time of year with the leaves falling and changing. It kind of has that crisp, fresh air kind of smell. When we go outside and we do a senses check-in, or we just use the outside to kind of check in with our different emotions and senses, it's a great way for us to cope and to calm ourselves down. Okay, so I did a little magic before, and after I reminded you of that card that we pulled last week, I actually snuck that in our toolkit as well, and that's our mantra card that we pulled last week. And the reason I put this in here is because we have been talking about mantras recently, those positive messages we can say to ourselves, and that, my friends, is certainly another coping skill that we can use. So that is all we have in our coping toolkit for today. We have flower, fidget, our picture of lungs, and our positive mantra card. But like I said, as we go through the school year, we're going to talk about some other coping skills we can put into that box, and what else we can add to it to make ourselves feel better, to help ourselves get through those uncomfortable emotions. I want you to take a minute right now, and I want you to think about one other thing that I didn't talk about today that makes you feel better. My fourth graders, this should be pretty easy for you because of the lesson you've been doing with Mrs. Moore and I this week. We've been talking a lot about things that we can fill our lives with to help us feel less stressed or to help us cope. So that might be easy for you. My other friends, try to think about at least one other thing that you like to do that would go in your coping skills toolbox to help you get through those uncomfortable emotions. And remember, your toolkit is going to look different than my toolkit does. Maybe my toolkit is going to have these things in it that we just talked about. Maybe for you, not all of those work, and so you wouldn't keep them in your toolkit. Now, we're not all actually going to have coping skills toolkits, right? We're not all going to have a physical one we can actually hold and look through, though you can make one at home if you wanted. But the reason that we're using this is to get our minds thinking about the different coping skills we have available to us at all times. So you can take this with you, keep it in your mind. You don't have to have this physical one like Mrs. Heffler made this morning, but you can remind yourself of all of those things that are right at your fingertips, right at the tip of your brain, that are there for you to use whenever you need them, because many of our coping skills are things that we can carry with us throughout the day, things that we can practice without other people even knowing we're doing it. Mantras, deep breathing, senses check-in, all of those are things that you could do without the person next to you even knowing that it's happening. So that's really what the point of our coping skills toolkit is. We're going to keep working on this as the year goes on. I'm not sure if we'll do this more next week or not yet, but as I said, we will continue to build those toolkits together and to come up with some other things that we can put in there along the way. For right now, though, our time is just about up, my friends. So as usual, as always, I hope you're able to stay kind, LPES, I'll see you next week.